Welcome to the Healing Pain Podcast with Dr. Joe Tata. Each week, we interview top experts in physical therapy, pain science, and integrative pain care. You'll learn the most up-to-date information for treating and reversing persistent pain. This podcast is for educational purposes only and not intended to be used as personalized medical advice. And now, here's your host, Dr. Joe Tata.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to this week's episode of the Healing Pain Podcast, the show where we explore the dynamic world of chronic pain, neuroscience, physical therapy, and the opportunities for transforming how pain care is delivered. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Tata, CEO of the Integrative Pain Science Institute, where we train physical therapists and other practitioners on integrative whole person pain care. Joining us today is physiotherapist Chen. Ray is no ordinary physiotherapist. He is what is called an integrative physiotherapist with more than a decade of clinical experience, and his journey into the world of healing chronic pain is truly extraordinary. What sets Ray apart is his own lived experience, a path that has led him through chronic pain and trauma that ignited his unwavering passion for helping people heal their mind, their body, and their soul. Ray is also a mindfulness practitioner, holds a degree in psychology, and is a PhD candidate studying the effects and mechanisms of mindfulness. In today's episode, we'll explore Ray's remarkable path from pain to purpose and discuss the importance of building resilience as a foundation to growth after healing. What's truly amazing about Ray and his work, as well as his perspectives, is that he embraces a holistic integration of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being for the care of people with chronic pain and other chronic conditions. Without further ado, let's dive right into this captivating conversation with physiotherapist Chen. Hey there, Ray. Thanks for joining me this week on the podcast.
Hi, Joe. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yep. I'm excited to speak with you. Our paths have crossed. It feels like just you and I just overlapping in so many amazing, incredible, meaningful ways as physiotherapists. I love some of the work that you're doing and the direction that you've taken your career. And you and I spoke briefly before this, and just the thoughtfulness that you've put into what is physiotherapy, where are the challenges and barriers, where are the opportunities, how do I now want to shape my career? So we'll talk about a lot of that today, which I think is exciting, especially for the physical therapists who are listening. And then, we have people who struggle with pain that tune in as well. So I know they want to hear a little bit about your backstory and some of your chronic pain struggles. And then later on, I want to get into the topic that you and I were talking about, things like resiliency and growth, even in the midst of pain and suffering. But I think we should start with your personal story around chronic pain.
Thanks, Joe. My personal story, I guess, first started as a physio over a decade ago. I very quickly realized that the degree I studied did not really prepare me well enough to connect with the human, the person in front of me. The course was very much focused on the biomedical model, and I really loved the little bits of psychology in the course and became really interested in the human behind the body. And I felt a lot of the technical skills I learned in uni didn't really carry over in the clinician space. And then fast forward to 2017, I was working as a Sydney senior physio, working in football as a head physio. I was working really long hours and days, 6 to sometimes 7 days a week. I was getting really burnt out, partly my doing, of course. And I planned to have a really lengthy holiday to do some traveling by myself overseas. I was going through a period of growth in the midst of all this anyway. 6 weeks into the holiday, I got into a really bad bike accident overseas in Thailand. I had numerous injuries, but the main injury that really was of concern was this brachial plexus injury in my right arm. I lost all function in my right arm, basically. And I didn't really know much about it. I didn't know much about brachial plexus injuries because I hadn't really treated it as a physio. And my journey into pain really began because of that experience after the accident. My bouts of nerve pain due to my injury, which I go through. And even now, occasionally I go through that. And that really took me on this path of mindfulness in a way. I got really deeply entrenched in the study of mindfulness and Buddhism and Eastern philosophy. I really loved it and I really felt drawn to it in a way. And through that experience, I became a mindfulness teacher. I started studying psychology as well, started doing a PhD in mindfulness and pain. And I came back around to physio as now working as an integrative physio because of a lot of the work I saw from you. And I was really inspired by that. And I saw a lane for myself in the physiotherapy degree. And in the past, I almost felt like physio didn't allow me the flexibility to do what I'm doing now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely, I don't know if, I think about this so much because I run into professionals like you who are really creating their own version of, let's just call it an integrative, physiotherapist or an integrative physical therapist, which I now have on pretty much all of my bio and my social media. Like it says integrative physical therapist. And I do that specifically because one, when people come to me, whether it's a patient or people interested in other, products and programs I have, I want them to understand that this is not kind of recycled physical therapy. I think there's so much of that out there, especially in like the orthopedic realm, so to speak. And that we're learning to look at pain, suffering, physical function, the human capacity, right? Because I think a lot of this involves looking at people in a way where we see that they have the ability to thrive even in the midst of things that might be challenging. When I listen to your story, I hear things like, because a lot of physical therapists become interested in the field because they had an injury first.
Yes.
And then they went through schooling, through universities you mentioned, and into the profession. But rarely or less frequently do I come across someone like yourself who suffered a traumatic injury while they were actually a licensed physical therapist. I'm just wondering how that started to shape how you viewed and experienced pain versus what you learned. We all learn things in a very textbook manner almost in school.
I think that the experience of going through that injury and going through pain gave me a completely different understanding of pain from the perspective of the patient. I really felt that this experience allowed me to really empathize with those going through chronic pain and continues to allow me to understand pain in a really deep way because I'm someone who has gone through that injury, who is going through pain. And I view pain as my greatest teacher now because it's this experience that I have and that I continue to have that really informs so much of what I do, so much of my practice and my ability to connect to the person, to the human being behind these symptoms, behind the diagnoses.
You mentioned empathy. I think most pain professionals would say, "Oh, I'm an empathetic practitioner. Sure, I express empathy, and my patients can feel that." What did that look like for you as your pain developed and changed? How did you see the way you viewed pain develop and change in, let's say, your patients or clients?
I could certainly
to me,
see,
empathy is almost like it's a verb basically to me. It's something that happens within the container of the therapeutic context, but it's not something that's tangible that we can place our fingers on necessarily.
No, I think empathy is something, it's a constant process of communication and understanding of yourself and the awareness of yourself and to be able to understand others in a deeper way. when it comes to pain and my experience, I believe I believe I have a resilient and growth focused mind and personality, which is very helpful. But a lot of people going through pain do not have that because of their upbringing, their past experiences, genetics, whatever it is. And I feel like I've been shown a path out of suffering, out of pain. And I believe I can teach people a path for them that's specific for them that might not be anywhere near the path I went through, but I believe I have the innate ability to understand a person's path from suffering into kind of freedom.
And did the mindfulness piece of that come after the injury, or did you seek it out as a way to learn more about yourself through that process?
So mindfulness was something I was really interested in even before the injury, but it wasn't something I really pursued. So afterwards, it became something I was really more and more drawn to. And I started consuming a lot of material on the subject and try to get a deeper understanding of what it was, and began my own practice, which I didn't really do much of in the past. So I guess through that journey, it really helped me understand my pain too, using mindfulness practice to practice the qualities of kindness and compassion and non-reactivity, non-judgment, curiosity. It really helped me open my eyes to this experience of pain and take a step back as that observer and see what was actually happening.
And I know you started studying that in a more rigorous scientific way through your PhD.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I guess through that, I became just so passionate about it. I wanted to dedicate a lot of my time to that. So I began studying the effect of mindfulness-based interventions on pain symptoms, on musculoskeletal pain. But it's something I've suspended for now just because kind of life gets in the way and I had so many other things I wanted to do. And I felt kind of sitting down doing the rigorous act of writing research and writing papers becomes very difficult and time consuming.
Yeah. I know you have recently kind of created and developed more of a chronic pain program that has, I think it's really become kind of an embodiment of some of your work, where you now have space in a more substantial way to start to take this integrative physiotherapy approach to people who have chronic pain. Can you tell us about that program and how it works?
So that program, I run it at the moment with one of my colleagues. The group education component is a 4-day component. It's about 4 hours a day and it's run virtually. And basically it covers a lot of topics, but pain science, psychology and pain management, mindfulness and pain management, your rehabilitation, your sleep, nutrition, overall well-being, covers a lot of those concepts, covers a lot of concepts of ACT as well, acceptance and commitment therapy. And I also use the PERMA model, which I really love, of positive psychology. Mm-hmm. So it's something that's been developed by me and a colleague who we both have lived experience of pain. And we actually really draw on it in the program to, in a way, soften the program, soften the room, allow our participants to become more vulnerable as well through the program and allow that open communication.
And what parts do you deliver from? Because you said there's kind of a more traditional physical therapy component. There's a pain education component, a mindfulness component, a pain psychology component. Sounds like some lifestyle-based skills building components around probably sleep and stress management and optimizing nutrition. How much of that are you delivering to the group?
So the main days that I kind of lead, I'm in all of the days, but the day that I'm leading at the moment is the psychology and pain management and mindfulness day. We have a day dedicated to that, and that's where my passion lies. And another day where we do nutrition, sleep, and overall well-being, and that's something I really passionate about as well. So I run those 2 days basically.
And your other colleague is a physiotherapist as well?
Yes. So he's a physiotherapist that has been working in complex pain for a very long time. So yeah, he's done a lot of study in pain science. So he's a great balance for me because he's got the education in pain science that I don't have, and he's done a lot of work with Lorimer Mosley, who you'd know as well. Yeah.
It's interesting for me to hear, and this might be the first time I've kind of really heard it in such a direct way, that a physiotherapist is delivering the pain psychology part of it.
Yeah, just because I've finished 2 degrees in psychology and I started a PhD in the field of psychology. So it really was a process where I thought I was heading in that direction to become a psychologist before opportunity to work as a physio came back up, and I started to kind of mold everything together in a way, and it just happened organically that way. Yeah. But it's an area I'm just so passionate about, and I really want to build on as a physio, my psychologically informed pain care.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's where some of the ACT comes in, the mindfulness. Oh, that's
yes,
probably stacked in that kind of pillar of the care, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Have you started to take the psychology piece and start to really, because I think it's nice to have something like ACT, which has a kind of 6 processes and a central process of psychological flexibility. So you use that. But over time, I'm wondering if you've started to just kind of, mold it and change it a little bit and just start to develop your own approach based on your lived experience, your professional experience, the experience that your clients are sharing with you, which I think is something that we don't talk about enough at all.
Yes. And a huge component of that kind of began through this pain program is actually being vulnerable with the client in terms of my own experience around pain and my own experience of having to deal with my physical symptoms, my emotional health, my mental health. I think that really opened the door to the psychology component in the room, and the energy in the room as well. When I see clients, I'm able to really get in to the mind and to the emotional capacity of my client, and be able to draw out things that a lot of people would not be able to do just because they haven't had that, unfortunately wouldn't have had that lived experience. And I see my lived experience as a huge benefit, and is an area that I really cherish that experience, because it allows me to kind of live out my purpose now, live out my my goals in becoming a better pain clinician.
I like that you brought up the emotional capacity piece of it, because I there's still a bias somewhere, I think, that exists in the world of chronic pain management, that we're all now acutely aware that the brain is, let's just say, processing pain, right?
Yes.
And when people hear that, well, if the brain is involved, then it must be either a problem with, or the way we get to this problem is through thoughts. And
yes,
pain psychology, in essence, in some way, becomes about reframing thoughts. And even pain education really is kind of built off that foundation, really, right?
Yes.
Very few people, I think, have started to venture into, all right, well, let's talk now about the emotional regulation piece of that. And what does that mean? Because the emotion regulation piece really sits between the brain and the body. Yes. And raising awareness or bringing awareness to the idea that you may have these thoughts. They may change or not change depending on who you are and what your life experience is and what's happening. But you obviously have these emotions that are a product of this brain-body connection. And those emotions are experienced as feelings or feeling states within the body, which are bodily sensations in essence.
Yes. I believe the emotion regulation component and the emotional capacity component of clients to be one of the biggest parts in managing their pain. And often because a lot of people repress those emotions and repress those traumas around their pain experience and their past experiences, that if they don't allow themselves to let it come through them, through their bodies and through their practice of managing their pain, they'll never really get to the root of the pain. In a way, it's kind of hard to explain, right? But it's the component where if you're repressing all these emotions, it's going to show up in other ways in your physical body, in terms of pain, in terms of your feelings and sensations as well. So being able to process those emotions around your experience is such a critical factor. That I feel like that's the area I'm developing more and more in currently. And the ACT model is amazing, but it doesn't really explain how to get that emotional component out of people and that vulnerability out of people. And through this vulnerability, through my own experience, I'm able to slowly draw that out of people once they can build that therapeutic alliance as well.
I agree, because when you look at something like ACT, it's still, in its essence, is still a cognitive model.
Yeah.
Which is still a thinking-based model, right?
Yes.
Even the idea of diffusion is creating space from, if you read all the texts, it's creating space from thoughts. Later, the work has evolved, I think, where people are talking about creating space from different bodily sensations, emotions, feeling states, things like that. But yeah, when you first approach it, it's still a cognitive model. How have you started to, so, we have this pain education trend happening, right?
Yes.
Very much brain-based.
Yes.
Some might go as far to say it's still a reductionistic model of pain, right?
Yes.
Then you have a number of body-based therapies, all the physical therapies, and you even have some body-based psychotherapies out there as well. When you look at pain, now that you've studied all these different things and you've started to integrate it into, as you mentioned, this integrative physiotherapy approach, where do you see pain sitting, or where do you see to be the nexus of pain?
Oh, that's such a complex question, because pain is so complex and it's different for everyone, so individualistic. I really feel drawn to your prison model because I think it answers a lot of those questions. I believe pain care needs to move more towards resilience, growth, spiritual health, emotional healing. So I really believe there's definitely something in that to guide people along that journey, to be able to build resilience in people, because I'm someone who's gone through that post-traumatic growth, which is quite common in a lot of people who go through trauma. And the research suggests at least 10% of people go through growth after trauma. So there's a component of growth and resilience in there that's really key, I believe, in pain care.
Mm-hmm. Why do you feel that when I say we, I'm really focused on the physiotherapy profession. Why do you feel like we need to move toward growth and resilience? It's very, very different. And you and I spoke about this a little bit before we hit record here today. It's very different from a pathology-based model. And pathology-based models exist not only in physical therapy, but they also exist in psychotherapy.
Yes.
The entire DSM-5 is in some way based on a pathological, kind of model of the mind, so to speak. there's still a large emphasis on risk factors, that if we can identify the key risk factors to the pain experience, so to speak, that we would be able to either one, prevent pain, or two, treat it more effectively. And I'm not sure that the research has really demonstrated that, I would say, because we now have tons of self-report. We can self-report measures for everything. We can measure everything at this point. And there's new ones created every day and new constructs created every day. So why the shift from, why do you think we as professionals need to shift from this like pathogenic orientation to, the foundation of that model really is salutogenesis, which is really more about health. And as you mentioned, what's wrapped up in health is becoming resilient, is becoming growth. But I think the place that we haven't, because people skip over this in some way, why is this really needed? Because if we can't answer the why, then it's difficult for people to say, oh yeah, I want to try this, or yeah, we do need this.
Yes. I feel this is such a, again, great question, and it's very complex. I feel that in this pathological model that we're all under, we're really doing a disservice to people. We're making them feel like they're sick and they're broken when, as human beings, we have such amazing potential to be great, to grow and to be resilient and to really flourish in whatever pursuit speaks to us, and part of my role is really helping the client find that in themselves, helping the client find that spark that drives them. And that's the most rewarding aspect of being a clinician for me. As an integrative physio, I feel that's the essence of why I got into this role and why I have developed in this way, to bring out the magic in people and bring out that innate wisdom and innate resilience and growth that we can all kind of touch on as well, that we can all draw on. We just need to be supported by our healthcare practitioners to do so. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, that's my views anyway.
There are two things you said there that I kind of just put a little tag on. The first is, and I kind of love the metaphor of this, is that we're all under this pathology model. When you said the word under, I imagine in my mind, like there's like this weight that's holding us all down, if you will.
Holding us back.
Yeah. I mean, I think it holds us back as professionals to engage in care in a certain way. And then I think it holds back people with pain. And this is where I want to kind of get your input. Do you think that pathology-based model in some way keeps people in a state of helplessness, where it's very difficult for them to find the resources and the hope that they need to free themselves from this idea that I'm broken, there's something wrong, this needs to be fixed, and there must be a high-tech solution that exists actually outside of me that I now have to somehow insert inside my human body, whether that's through a medication, an injection, or someone, quote unquote, getting into my mind and, changing my thoughts, if you will, which we know that's not really how pain psychology works, so to speak.
Yes, I think that's a huge component of what's keeping a lot of people suffering from chronic pain sick and feeling helpless and broken, because of this model that we're under. And in a lot of ways, where I work in Australia, when I get these clients come in, they've been shown all through that biomedical model. They haven't really even touched on the biopsychosocial side of things, regardless of the integrative stuff that you're doing around the PRISM model. They're not even touching anywhere near that, unfortunately, by the time they come to me. So a huge part of my role is giving them the education to unpick their experience, to unpick what's happened to them in the past, the things that have been said to them. So I'm doing a lot of work to try to even get these people in a neutral position to then move forward. I think it can be very deflating in a way, seeing people that have been tossed through the system. And I believe, yeah, that's where we as clinicians and specialists and doctors really need to change that aspect of care, that we really need to bring in and integrate all these aspects of pain science and pain research that's so valuable going forward. But we're not following it because of this biomedical model that we're still under in a way.
I also like what you said about helping someone access their inner strength, their inner knowledge, their inner wisdom, the magic that's inside of them. And I think even no one on this podcast has used the word magic, right?
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying when you use the word magic, because I think there is magic within our DNA. There is magic within our cells, our nervous system. There's also magic even within that space between the therapist and the patient or the person with pain, where that healing starts to happen.
Yes.
You've obviously made a big mindset, big mental shift in understanding that there's nothing I can actually do to someone. I can't intervene, so to speak. I'm not an interventionalist, right? I think a lot of what happened early in the physical therapy realm was an intervention in some way, where PRISM really talks about a process. Like, we're bringing people through a process where they're under this biomedical model. We want to free them from that idea that they're broken, that there's some pathology there, basically, right? As you mentioned, get them to this neutral position where they're open and we're open, and now we can kind of start the work, right?
Yes.
And then PRISM, and a lot of the things that you've learned, mindfulness, and a lot of the pain psychology things you're working with, some of the lifestyle stuff, that's in PRISM. These are all processes, right? That now we take people through this process. They may not need every process, but there's definitely more than one process. How did you arrive at the point where you realize that I have to help someone change, not that I have to change what they're experiencing or change what they're going through in some way?
That came about through my own experience, through my own lived experience, through my own practice of mindfulness and meditation. I think I came to the understanding that for myself to grow, I needed to learn. I needed to teach myself. I needed to experience. I needed to be supported. I needed to be guided by teachers or by books or by my own experience. And I really feel there's so much value in the experiences that people go through. These pain sufferers have gone through such a deeply traumatic experience in a lot of ways, and to be able to find the strength and resilience in that experience is what I really want to bring out of people. And I feel that is that key that's going to unlock their healing and unlock so much of their recovery as well. And integrating those aspects that you said of psychology and the nutrition, sleep, and it's all a part of it. Like they're all things that you're drawing people's attention towards health and health promotion rather than being stuck in that disease model. And that's so much of what you talk about. And I really connected with the concept of sense of coherence as well, comprehensibility, manageability, meaningfulness. I think meaningfulness for me is one of the biggest parts of pain care that as clinicians we don't draw on enough. what does it mean for this client to live a meaningful life? That's huge.
Yeah, that comprehensibility, I think fits well with like pain education, right? Manageability, that's where we come in.
That's
and
it.
we can help people access the skills they already have and access their own strengths. And if they're ready, we can help them with kind of those new strengths and skills. And then there's that meaningfulness part, which I think it's the thing that people know is potentially the most important, the one thing that can move the needle the most, except they're not sure, how do I start talking about this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, my back hurts, my back is stiff, my back is painful. I can't bend over. I can only walk for a certain limit of time. How do I start to have a conversation with someone with pain now about meaning in life, right?
I think that is incredibly difficult conversation for a lot of clinicians to approach. And for someone like myself who studied psychology and acceptance and commitment therapy and the emotional components of pain, I myself can bring it up through my own experience. And especially in this pain program I run, I talk a lot from my own experience to give people the permission to talk about these things as well. So I find in a lot of cases, if I'm unable to explain my experience and being vulnerable with them, it's hard for them to open up to that conversation as well. So I personally feel that's where I come from. And then some people, you're not going to bring up that topic in the first session, of course. It takes time to build that rapport, to engage in that way with someone. And often people going through pain, they just want the pain to end. And those topics are not anywhere near their frame of mind to even broach with them to talk about.
A lot of the emotional resilience piece comes up in those conversations of meaningfulness.
Yes. And yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And I feel that the emotional resilience piece, it's so hard to teach as well. And I see your model that you've come up with as something that will come with a lot of difficulty and challenges, because how can we teach it to clinicians unless they have that self-awareness in themselves and they've gone through that journey of emotional resilience, emotional healing themselves. And for me, if I look at myself before the accident, I wasn't ready to really treat pain clients the way that I can now. And that's through my own personal journey that I'm able to do that. And I struggle to see if someone hasn't gone through not a similar journey, but gone through their own kind of emotional, personal growth kind of journey. They're like, how can they draw on those tools to help the person in front of them?
Yeah, I mean, you're a step ahead of me, because my next question was really going to be, do you think that professionals, and this is not just physiotherapists, there's a lot of professionals out there who treat pain, do you think we really are preparing people to treat pain in a way that is comprehensive and effective? It's a little bit I'm leading, it's definitely a little bit of a leading question, because obviously, you and I have spoken about this. I wrote that model on pain, pretty much saying that, in a lot of ways, these skills are not embedded within us as professionals. How can we ask people to cultivate these skills if we can't model them ourselves?
Extremely difficult. I believe we need to get clinicians to understand the perspective of the client first, get them to put themselves in the client's shoes. Imagine that they are the client, create case studies where they really take off that clinician cap and put on their patient kind of client cap, and really get in the mind of the sufferer. Because if you don't do that, it's very difficult to be able to show that kindness and compassion and empathy for that experience. You need to really feel what someone is going through. And I think a lot of clinicians are really scared of that. Mm-hmm. And it is scary, to be honest. It's not comfortable trying to really imagine someone's experience of pain. It's not meant to be comfortable. It's meant to be dark and uncomfortable and painful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was working with someone yesterday, and there was a moment during the session where I noticed, like, I'm uncomfortable. Like, I am uncomfortable. And then I was like, yes. Are they uncomfortable too? Am I uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable? Or am I uncomfortable with something else that's happening in the moment of this exchange, so to speak?
Yes.
I'm still kind of thinking about that patient yesterday and starting to unpack that. But when I was done, I was wondering, is this actually where, like, the work is happening, basically, where we're becoming physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually resilient by interfacing with these exchanges, the relational exchanges between two people that are very uncomfortable at times?
Yes, and for me, I have an article on my website about finding comfort in that discomfort, and that's such a key area that I'm constantly improving on, because I obviously I still get very uncomfortable in some sessions with clients, but my ability to sit with that and find that level of being able to meet the client where they are is really key, and offering that guiding hand, offering that hand of support, and allowing space for them to communicate those uncomfortable truths and those experiences is such a huge part of what we do, of what you do as well, Joe.
And mindfulness comes in handy there, of course.
Yes. And I think for me, I integrate mindfulness by using guided meditation in my sessions, really just to allow people to kind of sit in that feeling, sit in the emotions, in the sensations, and gain some kind of freedom from them through that experience, through that therapy.
Yeah, in that PRISM model, I struggled with putting mindfulness in as a process or psychological flexibility. They're very similar concepts. Some would say they're exactly the same in some way.
Yeah. Yes.
And if people, would say they're different, I would say that's fine. You can substitute kind of one process for the next. But I think at the core, there's this idea of being present with whatever's in the moment, in your mind, in your body, in your nervous system, and still being able to move forward in a way that's effective. That's mindfulness, that's psychological flexibility. That's all of the, resilience building skills that really we've been talking about today.
Yes. And I think people who are in insurmountable amounts of pain, they really struggle with being present with that experience. They want to push away, they want to avoid, they want to distract rather than feel. And at the end of the day, it's through the process of feeling your emotions, feeling your sensations, feeling your physical body and being present with them that we actually gain freedom from them. And it's a hard thing for people to reconcile with.
Yeah. The paradox of being present with painful sensations.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. And that's the key area that I had to learn through my journey, and I'm trying to teach in a way, but it can be very difficult for many people.
Great. It's been great chatting with you today about integrative physiotherapy and both your personal journey and your professional journey, to see how those have really kind of braided and come together into, this pain program you have now, and some of the great things you're working on, both within kind of the more science evidence-based realm, but still bringing these tools and techniques to help people build pain resilience and growth. Let people know how they can learn more about you and follow your work.
So you can follow me. My website is www.reichen.com. So IYCHENZEN.com. And my Instagram page is the same, Ray Chen Zen. I'm not terribly active on social media, but I will try to be going forward if time obviously permits.
Great. So of course we'll link to that in all the show notes, which you can find at the integrative but raychenzen.com. And Ray's got a great Instagram handle. He may not post frequently, but the things he does post is a really high quality, evidence-based and very useful with regard to the topics we're talking about today, which really sit within, pain resiliency and growth. I also think Ray is a really good example of kind of the physiotherapist of the future in some way, where you don't have these kind of boundaries of how you practice, but through both your personal growth and your professional growth, you create this new version of physical therapy or physiotherapy. So make sure to share this, of course, with your physiotherapy colleagues, but really any health professional who may be stuck in what they're doing and they're looking for different ways to approach and help people with chronic pain. I'm Dr. Joe Tata. It's been great being here with you this week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for listening to the Healing Pain Podcast with Dr. Joe Tata. To subscribe to the podcast and learn more, visit integrativepainscienceinstitute.com. That's Integrative Pain Science Institute.com. Sign up to receive weekly updates, leave a review on iTunes, and share this episode with your friends.